Ethan Marshall, a 28-year-old young man, lives in a small town on the outskirts of Salem, Massachusetts, famous for its dark history and an atmosphere thick with mystery. Ethan works as a history teacher at the local high school and has always been fascinated by the past, especially by supernatural tales. However, his personal life isn't going well. He recently went through a painful breakup with his fiancée, Emily, which left him devastated. Ethan is in a dark place in his life. The pain of the breakup haunts him day and night, becoming almost unbearable. He starts to feel that he needs to do something drastic to push away the obsessive thoughts of Emily. That's when he remembers an old urban legend about a cemetery located in the dense forest outside of town, where it's said that if you spend a night there, you can either forget your greatest sorrows or be consumed by them. Desperate for a way to escape his emotional agony, Ethan decides he has nothing to lose and resolves to spend a night in the cemetery. He believes that if he can overcome the fear and the legends, maybe he can finally leave Emily behind and move on with his life. But as he enters the cemetery, he not only challenges the legends but also awakens ancient and dark forces that dwell there. The sky is heavy with dark clouds as Ethan crosses the rusted gates of the cemetery. The cold wind cuts through his skin as he walks among the old tombstones, each telling a forgotten story. The atmosphere is oppressive, and the silence around him feels alive, as if the cemetery has been waiting for his arrival. With a flashlight in hand and his heart pounding, Ethan heads towards the center of the cemetery, where there is an abandoned mausoleum known as the Black Heart. They say that no one who spent the night there ever came back the same. Ethan sits on the cold ground, determined to face whatever comes his way. But as the night progresses, he begins to hear whispers from all sides, voices that seem to call his name. The darkness around him seems to come to life, and the stories he always thought were just myths start to materialize before his eyes. As the hours pass, the presence of something evil in the cemetery becomes more evident. The air around Ethan grows heavy, as if he is being suffocated by an invisible force. The shadows lengthen and move in impossible ways, creeping around the tombstones and drawing closer. The flashlight he brought begins to falter, flickering intermittently, leaving him in brief moments of total darkness. Ethan tries to convince himself that it's all just his imagination, a product of the fear and tension the place inspires. However, when he hears a deep, almost human wail coming from inside the mausoleum, his heart races. He stands up, his body trembling, but something prevents him from running away. Part of him wants to unravel the mystery that has always fascinated him, while another part screams for him to flee and save his life. As Ethan wrestles between fear and curiosity, the temperature drops sharply. His breath condenses in the air, and he notices that the tombstones around him are covered in a thin layer of frost, something impossible for an autumn night. The wind begins to howl, but the sound it carries is not natural. It's as if a legion of voices is screaming all at once, echoing through the trees and between the tombstones. Ethan tries to move away from the mausoleum, but every step he takes seems to be followed by something invisible. The ground beneath his feet starts to shift, as if something buried is trying to rise. In a moment of panic, he decides to head back to the center of the cemetery, but he realizes that the path he took is no longer the same. The tombstones seem to have shifted, forming a maze that prevents him from finding the exit. He runs, but the more he tries to escape, the more lost he becomes. Turning a corner between the tombstones, Ethan sees a figure in white in the distance. For a brief moment, he believes it's Emily, but as he approaches, he realizes it's not her. The figure is a woman in an old dress, her face pale and lifeless. Her eyes, deep and empty, gaze at him with infinite sadness. She extends her hand, and Ethan feels an intense pain in his head, as if his memories are being forcibly ripped away. At that moment, a new character emerges in the story, Sarah Whitlock, a 25-year-old woman who has been missing for months. Ethan recognizes her from the photos he's seen on posters around town. But what is she doing here? And why does she look so frightened? Sarah tries to speak to Ethan, but her voice is a weak whisper, almost inaudible. She points to the mausoleum, and Ethan understands that something terrible happened to her there. Sarah tries to guide Ethan away from the cemetery, but the dark forces seem unwilling to let them leave. The path to the exit disappears, and the only direction left is back toward the Black Heart. Ethan realizes that the only chance of getting out of there is to face whatever is inside the mausoleum. But at the same time, he feels that this choice might seal his fate. The tension rises as Ethan and Sarah approach the mausoleum. The atmosphere becomes suffocating, and the feeling that something is about to happen intensifies with every step. The wind picks up, swirling around them, as if the cemetery itself is alive and trying to stop them from going any further. When they finally reach the entrance of the mausoleum, the iron door creaks and opens on its own. The interior is darker than the night outside, and the cold is piercing. Sarah grips Ethan's arm, her eyes pleading with him not to enter. But Ethan knows he has no choice. Something is waiting for him inside, something that might finally bring the forgetfulness he so desperately desires, or something much worse. Ethan and Sarah stand at the entrance of the mausoleum, where the air feels heavy, almost solid, and the cold seeps into their bones. Ethan knows that something crucial is about to happen, and it fills him with a primal fear. Yet, he feels a strange compulsion to enter. As he crosses the threshold, an invisible force seems to push him inside, and the door slams shut behind them with a loud bang, plunging them into total darkness. Inside the mausoleum, the darkness is absolute, but then, gradually, a faint light begins to emanate from the walls, revealing ancient inscriptions and symbols that Ethan doesn't recognize. In the center of the room, there is a stone altar, and on it an old, dusty book open to a specific page. The air around the altar is charged with energy, and Ethan feels a powerful presence watching him. Suddenly, a deep, resonant voice echoes through the space, speaking in a language Ethan doesn't understand. The voice seems to come from all sides, and then, with a rumble, the ground beneath them begins to tremble. A fissure opens in the floor, revealing a bottomless abyss, from which a black mist rapidly spreads throughout the mausoleum. Ethan feels a wave of panic rising within him. He realizes that he's in a place where the rules of the real world don't apply. Each step he takes seems to pull him deeper into the darkness, both literally and metaphorically. He thinks of Emily and the pain that brought him here, but now, in the face of such vast and incomprehensible forces, that suffering feels small and distant. As the black mist approaches, Sarah begins to scream, but her scream is quickly muffled. The mist envelopes her legs, rising up to her chest, and Ethan watches in horror as Sarah is slowly pulled into the abyss. He tries to reach her, but it's too late. The last thing he sees are Sarah's terrified eyes before she disappears completely into the darkness. With Sarah gone, Ethan feels an overwhelming guilt mixed with a growing sense of despair. He is alone now, trapped in a place where reality unravels, confronted by forces he doesn't understand. The voice returns, louder and clearer, and this time, Ethan can make out a few words: sacrifice, redemption, memories. Suddenly, the inscriptions on the walls begin to glow with a golden light. Ethan feels an intense pain in his head, as if something is trying to penetrate his memories. Images of his past begin to overlap with the reality around him, and he is forced to relive the most painful moments of his life. He sees again the moment he lost his parents in a tragic accident, the lonely nights of his childhood, and more recently, the devastating breakup with Emily. The cemetery and the mausoleum are not just physical places, but manifestations of his deepest pains, materialized for him to confront. Sarah's sacrifice was not by chance. She was chosen to open the door between worlds, allowing Ethan to finally face what he had been trying to forget. The voice explains that the cemetery is a trap for the desperate, a final test for those who seek total oblivion. But forgetting comes at a price. Ethan now understands that to get out alive, he must confront his past and his pain in a way he never imagined. He must make a sacrifice, but what or who, he still doesn't know. As Ethan tries to collect himself, the black mist begins to form human figures around him. They are distorted representations of people he knew, including Emily. These figures accuse him, scold him, and mock his weaknesses. Ethan tries to ignore them, but the emotional pain they inflict is almost unbearable. He is forced to face the darkness within himself, to accept the failures and regrets that haunt him. Each step towards the altar feels like a judgment. With the book still open on the altar, Ethan senses that it holds the answer, but also the key to his final fate. In a moment of desperation, Ethan opens the book with both hands, and the golden light that had illuminated the walls before explodes, filling the entire space with an intense brightness, blinding him. He feels himself being transported to another place, a final test before his fate is decided. When the golden light finally fades, Ethan finds himself in a strange and surreal space. It's no longer the dark mausoleum, but a vast, desolate plain covered in a dense fog. The sky is a mixture of red and black, as if it's on fire, and the air is heavy with the smell of sulfur. Ethan feels like he's in some sort of limbo, a place between life and death, between memory and forgetting. As he walks across the plain, Ethan hears a familiar voice inside his mind. It's Emily's voice, but not as he remembers it. She sounds distant, almost ethereal. Emily, in Ethan's mind. "Why did you leave me, Ethan? Why didn't you fight for us?" Ethan, whispering to himself, I tried so hard, but I was broken. I couldn't see beyond the pain." Emily's voice echoes, repeating the same questions as if testing his resolve. Ethan feels the pain of each word, like knives piercing his heart. "Emily, do you think you can escape me? That you can just forget me here?" Ethan, shouting, "I don't want to forget you, Emily. But the pain is unbearable. I don't know how to move on anymore." As Ethan battles with his thoughts, he sees a figure emerging from the fog. It's an old man, with tattered clothes and eyes full of dark knowledge. He carries a staff that glows with the same golden light Ethan saw in the mausoleum. Mysterious figure. "You came seeking forgetfulness, young man, but all you've found are the shadows of your own heart." Ethan, desperate, "Who are you? What do you want from me?" Mysterious figure. "I am but a guide, an ancient soul who has walked this path before. But know this, there is no escaping the pains you carry. They are as much a part of you as your flesh and bones." Ethan approaches the figure, feeling a mixture of fear and hope. The old man extends the staff to him, and Ethan hesitates before taking it. "Ethan, I don't want to live like this, trapped in a cycle of pain and regret. I just want peace." Mysterious figure. "Peace doesn't come from forgetting, but from acceptance. If you truly wish to be free, you must face what you have done, what you failed to do, and find your own path to redemption." Ethan realizes that running from his memories and trying to erase them has only made him more lost. He thought he could find relief in the cemetery, but now he sees that forgetting is not the solution. With the staff in hand, he feels a strange power flowing through his body, and an inner voice guides him. Ethan, to himself, "I can't change the past. I can't bring back what I lost. But maybe, just maybe, I can make peace with it." Suddenly, the ground begins to tremble again, and fissures open beneath his feet. The dark red sky starts to close in, and the fog around him begins to dissipate. Ethan sees the distorted figures from his past forming again, but this time, they don't seem as threatening. They are shadows, yes, but now he understands they are merely reflections of his own pain. Ethan, shouting at the shadows, I accept what I did and what I couldn't do. I accept who I am." The shadows draw closer, but instead of attacking him, they merge into a single figure, Ethan's younger self, before all the trauma and loss. He looks at this version of himself, who seems to be waiting for acknowledgement. Ethan, to his younger self, "I forgive you, and I forgive myself too." With these words, the younger version of Ethan smiles and begins to disappear, dissolving into the golden light that now fills the space. The old man with the staff nods approvingly and begins to walk away. Mysterious figure. "You've taken the first step. Now, the rest of the journey is yours. With the fog completely gone and the sky returning to normal, Ethan finds himself back in the cemetery. But something has changed. The place no longer seems as threatening. The tombstones, though still worn by time, no longer intimidate him. He feels that he has passed a test and emerged stronger on the other side, but there's still a shadow in the back of his mind, a final decision to be made. Ethan walks toward the cemetery gate, but before crossing it, he looks back one last time. The mausoleum is still there, quiet, as if nothing had happened. Ethan knows that what he faced inside was real, but he also understands that it's now up to him to carry the lessons learned into his life. On the way back home, Ethan feels a calm he hasn't experienced in a long time. He knows the road ahead won't be easy, but for the first time in months, he believes he can move forward. The old man's words echo in his mind. Peace comes from acceptance. But as he nears his home, a shadow passes in his peripheral vision. He stops and looks around, but sees nothing. Still, he feels that something from the cemetery has followed him. A reminder that even though he has taken the first step, the cemetery will never truly let him forget. Ethan returns home after the disturbing night at the cemetery, feeling changed but still uneasy. The old man with the staff had told him that he had taken the first step, but Ethan realizes that the true test is still to come. As he crosses the threshold of his house, a sense of unease washes over him. He turns on the lights, but the shadows seem longer and darker than usual. Whatever he awakened in the cemetery seems to have followed him home. The clock on the wall strikes midnight, exactly when Ethan hears a faint sound, like a whisper, coming from upstairs. His heart races, but he knows he must face what's coming. Climbing the stairs cautiously, he realizes the whisper is coming from the bedroom where he and Emily used to sleep. As he opens the door, the room is shrouded in darkness, but something different lingers in the air. A presence he recognizes, yet is terrified by. In the center of the room stands a figure with its back to him, dressed in the same white dress Emily wore on their last night together. Ethan feels the ground disappear beneath his feet as he recognizes the silhouette. He knows this isn't real, but the pain of seeing her again, of having her presence there, is almost unbearable. Ethan, voice trembling, "Emily, is that you?" The figure doesn't respond. Instead, it slowly turns around, revealing a face that is both familiar and horrifyingly distorted. It isn't Emily, but something that has taken her form, a manifestation of Ethan's guilt and pain. The figure's eyes are as black as the abyss, and a twisted, cold smile forms on its face. "Emily, did you think you could leave me behind, Ethan? Did you think you could escape the guilt, the regret?" Ethan steps back, his mind struggling to process what he's seeing. He knows he needs to confront it, but fear paralyzes him. The figure begins to approach, each step increasing the pressure in Ethan's chest, as if the air around him is being sucked away. The figure draws closer, and Ethan finds himself cornered. He knows this is the climax of his trial. Either he faces this manifestation of his inner demons, or he will be consumed by it. With his heart pounding, he forces himself to remember the old man's words. Peace comes from acceptance. "Ethan, I won't run anymore. I won't live trapped in the past." The figure stops abruptly, its black eyes fixed on Ethan. The room around them begins to tremble, as if it's about to collapse. The tension reaches its peak, and Ethan realizes that this is his last chance to free himself from all of this. "Emily," in a distorted voice, "do you think you can get rid of me so easily? I'm part of you." Ethan, with a final effort, stares directly at the figure, his body trembling, but his mind clearer than it has been in a long time. "Ethan, you are part of me, but you will no longer control me. I accept what happened, I accept my pain, but I won't let it define who I am anymore." With these words, the figure begins to dissolve, screaming in a tone that mixes desperation and anger. The darkness in its eyes disperses, and the twisted smile fades away. The room around Ethan starts to collapse, but he stands firm, refusing to look away. The figure of Emily vanishes completely, and the room returns to normal, as if nothing had happened. Ethan collapses to his knees, exhausted but feeling a profound relief and a clarity he hasn't felt in a long time. He has won his internal battle, but he knows that what remains afterward is still uncertain. The cemetery had been the catalyst, but the true confrontation was here, in his own home, where the memories and guilt were rooted. Ethan realizes that forgetting wasn't the answer. Acceptance and overcoming were the true path to peace. The silence in the room is almost deafening after the confrontation. Ethan takes a deep breath and slowly gets up, feeling a lightness in his shoulders. He walks to the window and looks out into the night. The shadows are still there, but they don't seem as threatening as before. He knows they will always be present, but now they no longer define him. In the weeks following that intense night, Ethan finds himself in a state of deep introspection. The confrontation with the manifestation of his pain and guilt left scars, but it also brought a clarity he hadn't experienced before. The cemetery and the encounter with the figure that took Emily's form changed him profoundly, but he knows he still needs to deal with the consequences of those experiences. Back in his daily life, Ethan notices small changes in himself. The pain of losing Emily is still there, but it no longer consumes him. He has returned to teaching history at the local high school, and his students notice that he seems calmer, less tormented. His passion for the past, which once seemed like a way to escape his own reality, has now transformed into a tool for understanding and connecting with the world around him. Ethan also feels the need to understand more about what happened to Sarah Whitlock, the young woman he encountered in the cemetery who was consumed by the black mist. Determined to uncover more about her, he begins to investigate her story, speaking with people who knew her and exploring the town's archives. What he discovers is disturbing. Sarah was a vibrant young woman, but like him, she was tormented by emotional pain that led her to the cemetery. Talking with the older residents of the town, Ethan learns that the cemetery has a long history of inexplicable tragedies. Many people, over the years, have sought the place in search of relief from their pain, but few left without deep scars, if they left at all. The mysterious figure he encountered, the old man with the staff, seems to be some kind of guardian, someone who guides lost souls but also tests their strength and capacity for confrontation. Ethan decides to honor Sarah's memory in a way she never could for herself. He organizes a small ceremony at the cemetery with a few townspeople to give her the rest she deserves. During the ceremony, Ethan gives a speech, not just about Sarah, but about the importance of confronting one's own demons and finding peace amidst internal chaos. After the ceremony, Ethan feels a weight lifted from his shoulders. He walks to the same part of the cemetery where he spent that terrifying night. The mausoleum, the Black Heart, is still there, but it seems different now. Less threatening, quieter. He leaves a flower at the entrance as a tribute to the souls who couldn't escape the cemetery, but also as a symbol of his own journey of redemption. On the way back home, Ethan reflects on everything that has happened. He finally understands that pain is a part of life, but it doesn't have to define who he is. The cemetery doesn't scare him anymore. On the contrary, it's a reminder of how much he has grown and that the shadows of the past only have power over him if he allows them to. At home, Ethan sits in his favorite chair, looking out the window. The night is calm, and he feels a rare moment of inner peace. He knows there's still a long road ahead, but now he's prepared to move forward, unafraid of what the future might bring. Ethan, thinking to himself, the peace I sought wasn't in forgetting, but in accepting who I am and what I've been through. The past will always be there, but it doesn't have to define my future.